Hello and welcome back to another Pinnacle preview. Today we're going to be looking at the IEM Katowice play-in stage, which is the stage just before the main event. It'll feature, I believe, 16 teams, and the top 8 will go through and compete. I think not directly to the Spodek, but they'll compete the stage before and be able to get to the playoff brackets. So there's a few big names here, the likes of Furia, Fnatic, Ninjas in Pajamas, who we'll talk about because there's a lot to talk about. Cloud9, but there's also some teams that are probably going to be quite unknown to a lot of people. Permitter being one of them. IHC, many of you who watch the Rio Major will know about them and some of the upsets that they
No namers,
pull
as an
off.
old friend might say.
No namers. Maybe, but not all of them. I think most of the names here, besides Permitter, are pretty well-known names across the scene. Whether you viewed IEM Melbourne last year, you'll know the likes of Pain Gaming. But mainly, if you watch the major, you probably will know most of the teams here. I want to kick it off by let's talk about there's a particular part of the bracket which features Fnatic versus EG and Sprout versus OG. And for me, this is the most difficult part of the bracket. I don't know what your guys' takes are on this.
Yeah, I think when you get to this part for OG, I think you make this tournament or you make changes. Like there's no discernible way you cannot make it through this bracket and into Katowice. Sorry, if you don't make it to Katowice, you've got to make changes. This roster's been together long enough now that you can't keep saying, "Oh, we've got to give them time." They're kind of new. They're not new anymore, and this roster should be doing more damage than it currently is. They've had some decent results in some matches. They've not won anything. They've not made any particularly deep runs. And I've kind of expected more, especially from a team with Dexter on it that we've been hyping up for a long time now. And is if they don't take down Sprout, that's an early warning sign. If they don't make it through this bracket at all, like I could take a loss to Fnatic. If Fnatic go through, beat EV Geniuses, and they lose to Fnatic, and then they win in the lower bracket, that's all right. It depends on their placement in Katowice. I think it's still up in the air, but I think this team is not currently doing enough. Especially, but coming into the new year, maybe that's changed. Maybe that's different. I just don't at the minute. I'm not seeing it, and that's the big pain point for me.
Um, I'm gonna argue with you.
Oh, go for it.
I'm gonna
Go
take
for it.
the OG pill heading into 2023. Look, I agree with what you're saying. Look, these guys have been together for quite a while. But fundamentally, they have been improving, in my opinion, event on event. And rather if that's shown in results, it's definitely shown in the demos. I feel like these guys are coming together. A big sticking point and a big cause for concern in 2022 was the adaptation of Neofrag coming into tier 1 and how he was going to evolve and adapt. And this guy, I feel like he actually has started to kind of hit the ground running. He is now that guy, kind of performing a lot better. And I'm excited to see what OG can provide here. I feel like you're right. It'll be an incredible disappointment if they don't make it through the play-ins here. I feel like they've got a very tough draw, especially in the upper bracket. I can see we can get on to talk to about Sprout later, but I can see that one being a very close best of 3 because I think Sprout, the
Well,
signings they've
to
made,
stop you there briefly, all matches in the first round are best of ones, which
incredible. All
for
right, but
me is worrying.
they should beat Sprout then. But I mean that gets a little bit more up in the air if it's best of ones. I mean, I feel like if this favors anyone, it's going to obviously favor the most consistent teams in the whole thing. And so you take a look on that side of the bracket. You take a look at Fnatic, EG, Sprout, OG. Fnatic are the most consistent of the bunch. So I think out of the 4 of those, you put them at the top of the list. I'd then throw OG in second, and then EG, Sprout down the bottom a little bit.
I know EG took a game off, took a series off Heroic, but Heroic looked the worst they've ever looked in Blast. Like it's been quite bad. It looks like the beginning of the downfall for Astralis. That's kind of what it looks like. I know they're never as long lived as or as good as the Astralis dynasty was, but it looks like with the beginning of the end. It looks like some changes are going to come in. I mean, that could be completely wrong. Read. It could be one bad tournament. They come back into it, but it looks like they've been figured out. It looks like, especially with the Vitality game, like the way that Vitality have gone away and then spent the Christmas break and figured them out, worked them out, and they said come back into it. We want to play Heroic. They said on the interviews, we want to play Heroic because we think we've got an idea. And then it took them to their best map and beat them on it.
I think that I don't think Heroic will be making changes.
No, they shouldn't.
But I
Not
think
immediately,
I
but I
think
think it's the beginning. The
they
end.
probably, Vitality are a team that want to prove that they're the best. They've made all these changes. They've spent all this money. You've gone onto an international roster. You brought in like Sonic, Spinks, who didn't have a particularly great end to the year, and I think they want to prove something more on that than that is on
And I think it would be
Heroic
fine
side.
dropping that game to Vitality, but dropping the game to EG, I don't think that means EG's any good. I just think Heroic are starting a decline.
I think EG showed some signs of what they can do. I think Wiz is definitely a good pickup. The Cirque drop, I think, has been a long, long time coming. That
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
the ratings that he had been showing across the last year or two were horrific for an AWPer. Especially as someone who displayed so much during that era when they were quite dominant under RNG and they were winning tournaments, and you think, what has actually happened there? And I mean, there's enough to be said about the whole EG system with their free teams, but I think Wiz shows good signs. He's been performing well over at Blast. For me, it's just about keeping consistency with the likes
Yeah.
of Automatic and Breeze. I think those players particularly, because you always talk about a team and you say, well, you really want a core three to be fragging to kind of get you through. That's what you look at. In Vitality, the reason they've been doing so well is because Spinks have been performing again. You have Zywoo consistent, and then you need Dupree or Magisk. And
Apex probably
Dupree,
turned his monitor on.
I mean,
this last
it's
game.
nice to have an IGL that can frag, and Neelan for me has been someone that had been doing that previously, but again, it's consistency. There was a series at Blast where I think he was the top fragger, 20 something kills, performed really well. The rest of the series, I think he had in both games like a 0.34 rating, which is,
Yeah,
you know,
his rating those last 3 months has really, really suffered. He's at like 0.8.
but if you can have a game as an IGL where you can carry a series, especially against these top teams, and then you go into the next two and you're at 0.3, that's Jacob in open level performances. So if you can do that, you need to remain consistent. So I don't see them having a chance against Fnatic.
Before I give Jacob a chance to respond to that rude accusation, I
Get involved. Not
I,
getting
I
involved.
feel I
Not
feel
worth it.
like look, there's a lot of I feel like there's a lot of pessimism I'm hearing just from these chats, and
Yeah.
I feel like what's important to kind of like look at is this is the first big tournament of the year. You're going to have people trying new setups, trying new things. And EG, yeah, they've got a way they've worked and they've got a point to prove. I feel like they are actually getting a lot better series in, series out. Yes, individuals will not be consistent immediately. I agree. They need to be. However, this is a process. It's like a rebuild of this team. And then you've removed one of the main structural pillars in Cirque, and you've brought in a relatively unknown AWPer in Wiz. That is going to take time to kind of not only inside the server but outside the server. You probably lost a big personality. You've lost a friendship there with Breeze and Automatic. These guys that have been together for such a long time. It's good that Wiz has previously played with Hex on RGB Esports, I think it was. So he can come in and he can feel a little bit more comfortable. I feel like that transition period will be a little bit more smoother. These guys are all professionals anyway, but when you kind of isolate the EG series, and just go building on from 2022, look, they are improving. And again, that's a team that you need to give a little bit of time to. I'm going to sound like a broken record, I feel like, for the majority of this episode, because I'm going to say for a lot of these organizations, you want to give time. And it's literally because I know, but
They
at the
have
same
time. It's
time,
Katowice. It's Katowice. It's
I know they
Katowice.
don't. I know they don't have time, but I'm not talking
Katowice.
about this. I'm not talking about just this event in
I get it,
isolation.
yeah.
I'm talking about for the entire year. I'm really not a big fan of when teams just instantly just drop and cut changes. They don't give teams a chance. So that's why
I'm
I'm
a
going to
fan
be
of giving them a
sounding
chance.
a bit of a pain, to be honest.
I'm a fan of giving them a chance, but they are run out of time. It is Katowice. You are now playing one of the outside the major, the biggest tournament of the year. Like,
I don't think that you can make a change at the start of the year and come into Katowice expecting to do anything. I think this is a great place for them to get themselves experience against some of these top teams. I think that's what they're going to be looking for here. Like if I'm EG, I'm going into the play-ins. Like this is great for us. We're trying to qualify for a tournament. If we get to it, fantastic. But if we don't, we get to play against Fnatic in the first round, a team that is on the up and coming. You know, you get to play against either OG or Sprout, a team that you should have some competitiveness against, because let's be real, the way EG played in that heroic series, they can take series against some of these, you know, lower 10 to 20 rankings, ranking teams. So I think EG, you're definitely right. I think time is something that a lot of these teams are going to be needing, because it's the start of the year. The player
Yep.
break happened. Lots of changes have occurred. And I think it's difficult for Katowice to be your staple point. You know, everyone makes the changes at the start of the year because we're preparing for the major. That's it. Like for me, maybe not for all of these changes, but for a lot
I
of
was
these
only talking about
changes,
OG when it comes to changes. I don't think the rest of them are liable for it. I think OG has been together long enough now, though, that they should be making Katowice.
I think OG's problem is that they always make the changes, and they that, you know, there's always the thing, they give them too much
They
time,
don't.
but
You
it's
were
like
talking about
I
that
think
three core.
changes. No, but the thing with you actually are starting to see Neofrag actually
Yeah, you
develop
are.
Oh, I'm
himself
not.
into a
It's not
player.
necessarily Neofrag got a problem with it. I think there's too much when it comes to them as players, 5 players. I think the only one they're performing at a proper tier 1 level at the minute is Dexter. Like Nex is doing his job as an IGL, fine, cool. Well, but if you need more firepower on that team, there's not enough. Fnatic just beat them pound for firepower, and I wouldn't put Fnatic in top 10. So I don't know.
I do think that when you're playing against the likes of FaZe, showing your, you know, your direct opposite in terms of firepower is always going to be a lose-lose. There's not many teams out there that you could pair up to FaZe and say this role is equal to this role. You know,
Yeah,
it's very tough. I think with OG, you're right. Dexter is by far the best performing player, but even so, if you look at some of these series that they've been playing, you know, Neofrag's been top fragging, or Flames has been top fragging. I think Fiku's been one of the lower rated players, but um, you know, that's role dependence again. And I think Nexa, I mean, had a great series against Heroic. I think the team just needs more chances to play against tier 1. I think that's what a lot of the teams struggle with, because they're kind of slapped into that bracket where, are they good enough to be playing in these tournaments? Are they good enough to get a direct invite? It's that kind of situation with OG. I put them in the same camp as Ents, who are also in this play-in. I think Ents are currently in a stage where they're, you know, trying to rebuild. We've not seen much from them. They had an okay showing at the major, but they're they're all trying to kind of develop themselves for, in my mind, to like Mao's spot, where Mao's
yeah.
develop their rosters really well. They have a really good showing at an event, and then they'll probably end up selling a lot of their players off, and then they do the same. But I think Ents and OG need to kind of, they just need to play. Like that's it. I think they just need to play. They can beat these teams. They've shown it before, you know, the amount of times they've come into blast events and 2-0'd FaZe and situations like that. They just need to play. That's my opinion on OG.
Fair enough.
But speaking of Ents, they play in the bottom of the bracket with against Pain. Pain were a team last year who ended up winning IEM Melbourne against Imperial. Many people have opinions on Imperial, whether, you know, they are a good team or whether they're just a team fielding legends to, you know, make a name. I think Pain are being quite a good showing as a Brazilian team, considering the amount of young talent on it. But the problem that they're going to face is they have Cloud9 in the lower bracket, or IHC, and I think we can remove the or IHC section from that and say that if they do manage to beat Ents, they're probably against Cloud9, and that is a hard match for anybody. I think for me, Cloud9 are one of the teams that will go toe to toe with any team. I'm not sure how much of that is true since the Buster change, and I'd like to get your guys' opinions on that.
Sorry, you said a lot of words at the end there. Talk about Pain as well. We can start with Pain. Look, I feel
Yep.
like they get slept on a little bit. I feel like it's been a really rough draw for them. The fact that they've got this like quadrant with Ents, Cloud9, Zevi and Skulls, for me, exceptional pickups. I feel like there's deep rooted connections in the Brazilian scene. You're always going to get these little unknown entities that are going to pop out of nowhere. They were unbelievable in Melbourne, as you pointed out, and Pain just keep on going in CCT as well. They're ranked because their whole team lives in North America. They play under the North America Cup. They're ranked second in the regional points, so there's no doubt in my mind that they will be attending the Studio LAN for that one when that one rolls around. They've just been performing consistently, and I'm excited to see how they will perform. I feel like a lot of people will overlook them, but for me, when it comes to this event, who knows? They might have a trick or two up their sleeve. They're definitely a sleeper team to watch out for in the lower bracket. So that's one thing. You talked about Cloud9 and the Buster change as well. Not a fan of it personally. I feel like it kind of is with the consensus. I don't think Inters was really doing anything wrong. I just feel like the identity and the leadership of Cloud9 has really been turbulent over the last, well, I'd even say since Dallas, to be honest. And for me, that's where the core problem lies. Whether that needed a roster change, I don't think so. I don't think they even needed to change anyone. I just think maybe a reevaluation of a game plan, the reevaluation of just maybe some roles and identities within the team, because you take a look at the HLTV stats, you've got Shiro, best AWP, Axile, best rifler. Sorry, one of the best AWPs, I should say, for Shiro. But Axel definitely the best rifler according to the HRT rankings, fully deserved as well. I think he's been absolutely phenomenal. But you've got that level of firepower in your team and you are not making deep runs in tournaments. There's something fundamentally wrong, and that is not because of a support player.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think removing Inters was the move. I think Inters was doing exceptional in the role he was playing. If you look at some of his support stats, like they're incredible. So I don't really, I mean, and for me at least, he seems to be playing a hell of a lot better at the end of the year than he
Yeah, he
had for the
was.
rest of the year. Like there were moments in the major he was getting clutches and like he was playing really well. So it surprised me honestly. Yeah, I don't know if that's gonna bring better results for the team. That's my concern. I'm like, how much? That's not much of a change in terms of firepower. So, is it to try and bring a different personality to the team? Is it to
It could
try
be a
and bring
coping
somebody?
mechanism change. They could be just trying to change your environment because people say that every now and then maybe a change is what you need to change, bring in fresh ideas, fresh changes. But I think that people keep looking at this new identity for Counter Strike, where nowadays you don't have necessarily a set role. Everyone's really fluid. You can play all 5 rounds within one round. You know, all 5 roles within one round or whatever. Was the quote from Blast. Like you could put yourself playing the entry position, you get your pick, and then you're low on health, so you play out with the AWP and then switch out and Bogdan's Law and whatnot, and you end up playing all 5 roles when they're around. You see something your IGL doesn't, you call it for it. It's a lot more fluidity, and maybe they believe that Buster's got more of an opportunity to be more fluid within that role, to be more of a star output while at the same time bring. Well, I think Nafany was really good as a support player. I don't know that Buster can match that, but I also don't know. It's just, it does seem weird. It does seem out of left field. But you can't change Axar, you can't change Shiro. You're not going to change the IGL out. You're not going to get rid of Nafany, are you? And Hobbit's your experience, your major winner, your
Consistency.
Yeah, Hobbit is a very
your
consistent
consistency,
player.
and kind of like your little sage in the corner who's like the wisdom guy. Yes, we've got the experience. That's what people always like. They love it with esports teams, especially in League and especially in CS:GO. You get like two like fundamentally guys been listening like Irene and Carrigan, where they've been here forever, and then you grab your stars, you grab your twist and your broken, you grab your
Rops.
the other one, that one, him. And
The other one.
and you get you've got the experience that meets the fresh talent, and then you've got somebody who's more consistent on the side, who's the Rops there. And that's the generally considered the recipe. So if you get rid of Hobbit, you don't have your experience. You get rid of the IGL and you change in everything, and you can't get rid of your 2 stars. So he is the only fundamental change you can really make in that roster. If you like, something's got to change. We're not winning everything. We want to be winning everything, right? And when you've got the best rifler and you've got the best AWPer and you're not winning everything, as you said, there's a problem. And I think you look at other teams and they're a lot more fluid with their roles. I don't think the only you could phase and they can all do like Twister's a massive nerd with all of his utility and everything, and he's also the star player. And you look at Carrigan's doing most of their entry work, a lot of their utility work, and calling the team, and they don't have place for like a Nafany. Sorry, not a Nafany, for an
I
Inters.
think the problem lies with their style. I think their style is what needed looking at. I
Yeah.
think everyone had figured them out a lot. Some of these, it's like you're saying with Carrigan when he's doing all the entry work. Nafany as well would do a lot of the entry work and open up a lot of the space. But I just think teams have figured it out a lot. You come in, they came into these tournaments, and every tournament they get faced against Liquid in the playoff round, and Liquid would beat them. And you're like, well, that's a matchup they should never lose, especially
Maybe that's
when
what
Liquid
we're
first came
seeing
into it.
last.
I just think that Cloud9 shouldn't have. I don't think they should have made the change. They might prove everybody wrong. Who knows? They come into it and they win
There has to be
Katowice,
a
but
reason for making it, right?
Yeah.
Buster
So
gets 3 aces and 1.5 ring. I don't know.
And before I move on to this next team, there's a little stat I want to throw out there. So they
Uh-oh.
introduced this play-in stage 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and since then, both teams that have been in the play-in stage have won the tournament. It was Gambit
Nice.
and then FaZe. So when NIP win the tournament,
Oh, shut up.
I'm kidding.
Oh, shut up.
The NIP is the team I want to talk about next. Just before recording this, we got hit with some crazy news of Config replacing Hampus temporarily. We'll see how long temporarily is because, device, that was temporary. And, he never came back.
NIP, no invariable players.
So we will. I had a bold statement that I made to Jacob, saying that I personally believe that NIP would be a contender for the second major of the year had all 5 players stuck together in this squad. And then 5 days later, Maxstub replaced Hampus at Blast. I also said that I think Rez would be a top 10 player of the year had that been the case. And already they've decided. I mean, I don't want to comment on personal situations. I have no idea what's gone on there, but they've already had to replace a player, and it's someone who is vital to them and to their core. Someone who was the previous IGL of the team, probably is still the second caller in some aspect, and he has a lot of personality and a lot of maturity from what I've seen of some of the vlogs where they put out. Just his attitude, and they've replaced him now with Config. And I think that is a lot of personality, but consistency. I mean, Hampus didn't have the greatest showing at Blast. That's probably got to do stuff with to do with his personal situation. But
Yeah.
would you have picked Config if you had to replace someone for the rest of the spring season?
Yeah.
That been your choice?
Yeah.
It seems everyone wants him.
No, I take a gamble on Config.
But why?
If
Why
you're
would
gonna
you pick Config?
if you're gonna have somebody for a short period of time, and I get it's a bit longer than a couple or a tournament or two, but he's not got anything else to do. He's not on another team. He's not, no one wants to pick him up. It gives him a second chance to represent himself. He's going to have a fire under his ass because if he doesn't, this is it. It's done for him. This is his last chance. If he can turn up now and show everybody he can still perform on a T1 level, which I believe he can. I believe he can still be a Tier 1 player. I get it. He's inconsistent. He doesn't always put it up. I think the issue is obviously he's got these personality problems or whatever it is. We don't know entirely the story, but it's most of it's leaked or got out somehow. If he has a player is problematic and he's being removed and can't be seen representing an organization, this is it. And this, if you're looking for there's no other player who wants to prove himself as much in this position. If he comes in and does wonders for NIP, gets into a couple of playoffs, puts in some good performances and some best of threes, gets some top tier teams, he'll get a pickup after. And that's all he's got to be thinking about. If he comes in with that mindset, it's a really, really good decision. If he doesn't come in with that mindset, if he comes in checked out, like you sometimes see him where he comes in and he doesn't shoot anybody, well, then of course it's going to be an appalling decision. But I personally believe he's going to have a fire under his ass. He's going to really want to show that he can still do it.
Well, I can name you one player who, wants another shot, and that's S-Tag, who I personally believed, having some talks over the winter period, as much as I love Hampus, I believe it should have been him who should have gone from the roster and not S-Tag. I think S-Tag plays the role better, and I think if you want someone to slot in who already knows the system, why have they not just got S-Tag back? Have you got any thoughts on this, Brown, on anyone that you think might have been a better choice, or do you think Config is the choice?
I think, look, at the end of the day, the way the NIP were planning out 2023 was to not have S-Tag in the equation. I feel like it is a step backwards for the organization's entire strategy if they then revert back to a player that they originally kicked. So I feel like that you have to look forward. You look for pound who's going to perform better. And I actually agree with a lot of the sentiment as what Jacob was saying about picking up config. Firstly, before I kind of like deep dive into this, I just want to say, look, obviously Hampus has been removed for personal reasons. Honestly, wish him nothing but the best.
Oh,
Hope
yeah,
that
yeah.
everything is okay, and we can see him back on the server very soon, because he gained a lot of fans from being in NIP, very consistent player, and as you said, a really mature, humble guy. And we don't wish any bad feelings on anyone. So honestly, hope he is okay. Config situation, I do agree. Look, he's been saying about how motivated he is. I feel like if Astralis had maybe taken a gamble on him, hadn't released him from the roster, and they bring back Device and they have this 5 that they've got with Blameth and Glaive, I actually think that team starts to compete again. I honestly do believe it. And that is because obviously you've got that long-standing history of Blameth and Config, but Config can just pop off, take the game by a scruff of the neck, and just completely overrun anyone. And if he is motivated and he's determined to prove himself, if he's had to step out of this comfort zone and come back in, try for this opportunity, I actually think, look, it is, of course, it's a gamble based on every speculation, but I think it's a necessary one. I don't think it's the right decision to go back on your original strategy. Obviously, esports is so dynamic; it changes day in, day out. I mean, this max to stand in, and then obviously the config permanent replacement is something that NIP could never have predicted. And I think, but at the same time, you need to go with your strategy as close as you can, despite these setbacks.
I don't think S-Tag's a bad player or a bad fit. I just
Agreed.
don't think you can regress. I just
No,
don't think you can
after
regress.
hearing what you've said, yeah, no, I agree with you. I do agree with you. I think
And config, yeah, go on.
no, you can see it. Config has, I mean, even when he stood in for heroic at the
Played well with
yeah,
heroic
he
as
did
well.
play very well. Yeah. My only concern is the role situation. You know how well will he slot into that role? But I mean, he's had enough experience in tier 1. He should just be able to get in there. Alexi B is a good IGL. They've got I mean, they're one of the biggest orgs in Counter-Strike. They have the staff there to be able to accommodate him and welcome him.
Yeah. And look, FaZe wanted him to stand in whilst Rain was absent.
Exactly. Yeah.
So like he is of a good enough caliber to play for one of the best performing teams of 2022, and it's evident by that because they wanted him. Heroic wanted him so much that they didn't tell him that they've just signed him up to the subs. So look, I feel like for me it is actually a very good pickup. And NIP, they're trying to make the best of a bad situation, and let's see what happens.
Yeah. I believe that we Pinnacle had NIP as the outright favorites to go through. At least that's what I remember reading, but I don't know if that's entirely true because Cloud9 are here. So I think that might have been before people realized who were at this event, but I think NIP are up there as one of the
They've got
favorites.
the easiest run to qualify NIP.
And it does depend.
Well,
It depends. Well,
didn't
yeah.
Spirit
Provided
beat them?
config plays like his Nico impression rather than his I've got my tongue nailed to the desk impression.
Did Spirit not beat them at the major? Am I remembering things wrong? I seem to remember Spirit beating someone at the major.
I can't remember, but what you got to consider is, look, Spirit, very good team. They always pull a rabbit out of the hat at the major. No matter what team is put in front of them, they will make it through to the playoffs. They proved that not only in 2022, but like in some of the other majors of the past. But it's gone on recency bias. Spirit, very good team when it matters most. You're right. Look, this is the first S-tier tournament of 2023. You want to start off on the right foot. You know that Team Spirit will be coming into this prepared, but at the same time, you've got Head Trick, you've got your roles like all but fully fleshed out for NIP. I don't think they're going to have trouble, especially if the series is like a best of 1, best of 3. So
yeah,
I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, I think their first matchup against MIBR, MIBR are teams that have also, gone through changes, and the whole Brazilian scene's been shuffling about over the winter period. So yeah, I mean,
Yep.
I as you say, I can only echo that we get Hampus back soon, but I do think that they'll be fine getting through this playing stage. I think they should beat MIBR in a best of 1, and then in a best of 3, even if they lose to
Yeah,
Spirit.
they should.
They should, even if they manage it, then they should go through in the next stage. And then it's just, how do they do on the main stage? It's a
I
whole
think if
different
you,
beast.
I think this if it comes to a Spirit NIP best of 3 or whatever, Is the second round a best of 3, or is it best of 1 still?
Second round's best
The
of
best
3.
of 1's in upper bracket, and then lower ground's best of 3.
And first round is best of 1, and then best of 3 afterwards.
Okay, so I think the NIP Spirit thing comes down to a coach diff. I think if Spirit can get their hands on like Ancient and Dust 2, I think it looks really competitive.
Dust
I
2.
think
You're on an old
yeah.
map pool.
No, they can't have Dust 2.
Can't anymore, can they? It's Anubis.
Never mind.
Oh,
Never
no.
mind. NIP wins that then. NIP wins that. NIP wins that.
Yeah,
Easy peasy.
I
Sorry.
don't think
I've been
they are going to
watching too
struggle
much
too much
LPL.
there. I don't think they're going to struggle too much there. I mean, the other team in the bracket is Greyhound,
Yeah.
and
That should be fine.
it
Config's already on the
does.
HLTV page.
It pains
Sorry,
me
yeah.
to say that Greyhound is the best team in Australia right now.
Azza, where's Azza?
Considering what we had in the past. But I just
Your favorite
I
grass
don't see
faction,
them.
your best friend.
Grass faction is not going to do anything. Not against Wonderful. Wonderful is very talented AWPer.
He's really good. Yeah, no, he's really promising actually.
And the only other part of the bracket that we've not spoken about is the very top, which is Furia against Permitter and Big against Complexity. I think this is also a fairly tough part of the bracket. If you remove all of Permitter, Furia should just clean sweep
You
their
should
way
roll
through
over them.
Yeah.
I think Big wins this bracket.
I think you're delusional.
Really?
I think
I think you are completely delusional.
it's online, right?
Didn't NIP just beat them?
Is it online or is it in LAN?
Their situation is I'm pretty sure it's LAN because it says location Poland. So.
Oh, never
Playing
mind.
stage is
Never
LAN,
mind.
yeah.
Never mind. Big out last place. Sisson can't play unless he's at home.
I don't think that team has had enough time since last year where they had a similar situation to NIP where it was player in, player out, player in, player out. I think it's just another situation where it's play more.
I really like Big as a team. I really like everything they do for the German scene, and I think it was so unfortunate. They went for a string of bad luck in 2022. All I hope for Big is that they don't have any
Bad luck being COVID ended.
Just bad luck, just with injuries, with unfortunate circumstances, or with illness, and we get to see what the full 5 is supposed to do. Because there's very limited sample size of Big playing with their full 5 last year, and that's all I want from them. And I really want them to prove to us that they are still competitive, that they are still in the running. Because I think they've got very good players on that team. I still feel like the promotion for Crimbo into the main lineup was a good move. I think the Farven move exceptional from Sprout. Searson can be a little bit hit or miss, but I tell you what, when he is performing, he is unbelievable. The only one I've got question marks over really is Keto. But look, they brought him back into that roster for a reason, right? So I just want to see Big perform with all 5.
Yeah, I am looking forward to seeing them. I'm pretty sure we spoke about it briefly in the last blast thing we did, Brandon, where we said that them losing out on, pretty sure it was Faven who missed that event, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and we said like losing Faven there is a massive hit. Someone I
Faven's
believe
the best
is,
player on that team.
Yeah, definitely, and it's I think it's so fortunate for them that they have the Tabson as their IGL and Godby standing behind them for that team to be able to do as well as it did, given the circumstances they were under across the entirety of 2022. And
I think the style changes benefit them.
what with Godby?
I think the meta has changed.
Oh, okay.
I think watching Blast, I think the meta's changed. I mean, you see even Apex isn't running in like a hooligan anymore. Like he's actually holding back, taking angles. Like I saw him take a well estimated headshot where he had someone lined up and he stopped. And he didn't wildly spray while holding W. He stopped still and he lined it up and shot. Even Apex is not sprinting through smokes as much as he used to.
I imagine that has a lot to do with Zonic.
I don't think it does, but I also do think that the success of that and the indications of where Heroic were falling apart and how other teams are playing, from what I've seen, it's all a lot slower. And I think that really does benefit Big because I think they were already playing like that. I know a lot of the Russian teams already played slow and things like Cloud9 and Virtus Pro, they love playing slow. But I think it's leaning more into that, and I think that benefits Big stylistically. I think they like that idea. They don't have an IGL who likes running in like a lunatic. It's Tabson, for God's sake.
The only thing I'll say about this matchup is I do wish it was a best of 3 because I think Big against Complexity is going to be a great match. I think they are two very well
Yeah, that could go
paired
either
teams in
way.
terms of skill. Yeah, Hulzerk can, he's not really coming to that star or performance that he had when he first joined Dignitas. But I mean, he was playing with the retirement home at that point, so it's a lot easier to perform there. I think I think it's gonna be a very good series. That it's just a shame it's a best of 1. And it's also a shame that one of those 2 teams is gonna go straight down to the lower bracket. But
Yeah.
I also don't see either of them competing with Fury, given the form of Yuri and Keserato coming into the end of last
Mm.
year. I think Keserato was phenomenal, and I just don't see him slowing down. I imagine over the break, it's going to be a bit different because they're not in Brazil. They haven't got the whole crowd behind them, but they are still the best Brazilian team and have 2 of the best riflers, in the game. So yeah, I think Fury will take that quite nicely.